Hi, this is Thomas from Apex Game Tools. In this video we're going to continue our look at the grid component, and in this video we will be looking at the height map component of the grid. Now it starts here with the lower boundary and the upper boundary, and this is best visualized if we put it on the side here. As you can see, we have this wireframe around the grid. It is 1 below the y-origin of the grid, and it is 10 above. So within this boundary, the grid will calculate height differences that will basically allow units to follow the terrain. That could be Unity terrain, or it could be your own level geometry that it would follow. Now the next setting is called height granularity. This is the position of the grid as height map. So the smaller the granularity, the more precise a height map, because this is basically the distance between each of the sampled heights. The default value of 0.1 will fit humanoid creatures pretty well. If you have bigger units, you might want to set this to a higher level, and if you have smaller units, you might want to set it a bit lower. Just keep in mind that precision comes at a cost. The higher precision, the more memory is used. So that means the lower the granularity, the higher the memory use. Next we're just going to skip this sensitivity range that has to do with obstacles, which will be covered in another video. So the next thing we're going to look at is max walkable slope angle. And in order to explain that, I'm just going to activate a platform that I've put onto my scene, as you can see that. This is just a simple platform, and you can see we have a slope going up there and a slope going up there or down there. And this max walkable slope angle simply controls how steep these slopes can be and still be walkable by units, so that units can still walk up and down these slopes. Now the next max scale height is related to the previous setting. This controls how high a potential obstacle can be and not be considered an obstacle with regards to height, to the height map. Obviously, if something is very high, the unit will not be able to scale it. It will need to find some way to go up. For instance, if it tried to access from there to there, it wouldn't be able to, because that's simply too steep for it. It can't get from the ground to the top of the platform. It will need to go around and move up the slope. So this one controls the minimum, or actually the max scale height, which means how high can anything be and still be walked onto. So for instance, if you have a staircase, you would want the steps of the staircase, they will not be that high, but they will still be at an angle of 90 degrees probably, so that would violate this setting if it was left at 30. But you would still want your units to be able to walk up stairs. Also, you would want them to walk across pebbles or walk on larger rocks or whatever. So you can set this to control how sensitive it is to the height of objects. So let's see it in action. So these are all the settings you need to set up the height map. But in order to see the representation of the height map, we're going to look at the grid visualizer. As you can see right now, we have this layout mode where we see each of the individual cells, and that's not super helpful. It's helpful enough when we need to place our geometry, but it's not that helpful when we want to see how we can actually access different areas of our scene. So instead, I'm going to put it into accessibility mode. Now here, instead of showing cells, each of these lines show where a unit can walk. Right now, as you can see, it tells me that I can walk all over the ground. Now this is actually not true, because we have this platform placed, so I would expect that I would not be able to walk underneath this platform, since it actually sits on the ground. So the reason it is not probably displaying accessibility right now is that the height map calculation is quite heavy. So in short, in order in design mode, in order to have accessibility mode shown, you need to bake the grid. And I'm actually not going to go into what baking means, other than saying that it simply means that it takes a snapshot of how things look and it doesn't change that. So right now I do not need to recalculate my height map all the time. Now this is only something you have to do in design mode. When you run it, it will work just fine, even if the grid is not baked. But right now, as you can see, since we are still in design mode, we just bake the grid and we can now see accessibility lines. So we can see that from here, for instance, I cannot get onto the platform up there. There's no connection between the two. So actually right now I can only move up here. As I can see, I can also move between these two platforms, but I cannot move up and down the slopes. There's no line between these two. Now the reason for that is that these slopes are higher than 30 degrees. In fact, they are 45 degrees. So in order for this to work, I'll have to increase my max slope angle. So if I'm just going to set that up, let's just set that to 45.7. And since I can also just start my scene and we can see it there. There we go. And now you can see, now I can actually access this platform via this slope. I can go up and I can go down. So that was it for height maps and the visualization of the same.